This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
Next on the 5 o'clock report.
They are already trying to spin this as self-defense.
This goes to show the assaults that our ICE officers and our law enforcement are under every single day.
I fear that this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Now, let's go to the newsroom.
Minnesota mayhem. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Webster. The Midwestern state was in the spotlight today for two reasons, neither of them good. Foremost, a deadly Minneapolis confrontation between ICE officers and protesters. What we know for sure is a 37-year-old female protester was fatally shot by federal agents while in her SUV, though in dispute is whether she intended to ram ICE officers or was fleeing them. Video shows one officer had a grip on the vehicle when it sped off. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey.
They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. This was an agent recklessly using power that resulted in somebody dying.
Frey used an obscenity in demanding ICE leave Minneapolis, but says Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem.
This goes to show the assaults that our ICE officers and our law enforcement are under every single day. These vehicle rammings are domestic acts of terrorism.
Minneapolis police, ordered to not aid ICE enforcement, only arrived at the scene after the shooting, where they then secured what they're calling a crime scene. The state of Minnesota was already in the news this morning as congressional lawmakers held a hearing on fraud of government-funded programs that could range well into the billions of dollars. Committee Chair James Comer.
The breadth and depth of this fraud is breathtaking, and I fear that this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Top committee Democratic Rep Robert Garcia.
If we cared about fraud, we'd be starting at the very top.
Among those testifying, Minnesota state lawmaker Kristen Robbins, who addressed the fact that much of the fraud seen so far has ties to the state's Somali immigrant population.
It is important to say what is true and to stand up against fake allegations of racism or Islamophobia. Crime is crime, no matter who is committing it.
Minnesota's embattled Governor Tim Walz has been invited to testify at a follow-up hearing next month. Taking two more tankers. The Trump administration seizing two more Venezuelan-linked oil tankers, one that recently became a Russian-flagged vessel and was about to get a Russian naval escort. CBS's James Laporta.
Laws of the sea conventions have carve-outs, particularly if those ships are sanctioned, particularly if those ships are used for terrorism financing. The selling of oil could finance terrorism.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says interim Venezuelan leadership has asked to work with the U.S. to get the oil back. Those Iran protests, they keep on growing. Thousands taking to the streets all over the country. U.S. Ambassador to NATO Matt Whitaker tells Fox News.
The Iranian people want to be free, and they have been repressed for a long time. Obviously, it's a country of great potential that is not realized.
Middle East analyst Rebecca Heinrich with the Hudson Institute says those protests are different than other ones.
President Trump himself has said that we, the United States, are on the side of the protesters. That's incredibly meaningful because President Obama didn't do that in 2009. We were not as bold when there's been other protests since then.
In a gesture mocked by many around the world, Iranian leaders offered to give its citizens about $7 more a month in hopes that might cool the protests. The White House addressing reports that the Trump administration has its eye on acquiring Greenland one way or another. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says, yeah, it's true.
That's something that's currently being actively discussed by the president and his national security team.
The government of Denmark has requested an urgent meeting with Secretary of State Rubio over Trump's claim that the country is not able to protect Greenland, which is seen as strategic in meeting growing threats from Russia and China. Trump's team is exploring what it might cost to just buy Greenland. New federal nutrition guidelines.
My message is clear: eat real food.
Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who says the federal food advice you've gotten in the past wasn't always that good.
Federal policy promoted and subsidized highly processed foods and refined carbohydrates and turned a blind eye to the disastrous consequences. Today, the lies stop.
Kennedy says Americans should also eat more whole foods and stop demonizing saturated fats. Federal aviation officials say the tires of a LATAM Airlines Peru flight blew out moments after it landed at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport last night, prompting an emergency response and temporary delays at the airport.
All tires under the wings seem to be blown.
According to the FAA, the aircraft had just arrived from Lima, Peru, when several tires failed after touchdown. Despite the blowout, the plane landed safely, came to a controlled stop. And a viral post related to Uber Eats has been revealed to be an AI-generated hoax. The thread posted to Reddit says food service lowers drivers' pay based on customers' tips as having a desperation score to see how often drivers will accept low-paying orders. The president of Uber and the CEO of DoorDash both say the claims are made up, and the post was taken down by Reddit moderators. Still to come here on the 5 o'clock report. New York lawmakers back in session. A PA crackdown on fentanyl dealers. And sound advice for coping with those post-Christmas midwinter blues.
I'm Kevin Williams, and here is your Family Life regional weather forecast for the night tonight. Can't rule out a spot of drizzle, freezing drizzle, or an evening flurry. Otherwise, cloud cover breaking a bit for some overnight. Low temps, mid-20s to mid-30s. Tomorrow, clouds break and turning partly sunny. Milder, high temps 40s. Even milder Friday, but cloudy with showers arriving. High temperatures mid-40s to the middle 50s.
Loving the thaw. Thank you, Kevin. Checking the stories making news where you live across New York and Pennsylvania. The 2026 legislative session getting underway today in Albany. The 6-month term runs from January to June with a budget deadline of April 1st. Central New York State Senator Pat Fahey.
Wednesday will be a little more of the ceremonial work, but for me, it's the kickoff to the serious conversations that we need to have.
The issue of affordability is the key legislative concern for both Democrats and Republicans, with a focus on the high cost of housing, food, energy, and health care. Governor Hochul will lay out her legislative wish list in her State of the State speech. That's coming next Tuesday. The Onondaga County, New York District Attorney's Office says it will not pursue criminal charges against a Syracuse charter school. That's where a janitor died last year. Firefighters found high levels of carbon monoxide in the school at the time, but the authorities say the janitor actually died of heart failure. Pennsylvania State Senator Doug Mastriano wants fentanyl dealers to face a 25-year sentence whenever someone dies from an overdose.
We are not backing down. We are fighting for our communities and our families and for every Pennsylvanian who lost somebody they loved to this epidemic. Because behind every law we pass is a life that we're trying to save.
His bill, named Tyler's Law, for an 18-year-old Tyler Schennefelter who suffered a fatal overdose after consuming what he thought was Percocet. Instead, those pills were laced with fentanyl. The 110th Pennsylvania Farm Show starts this weekend in Harrisburg. It's the largest indoor agricultural expo anywhere in America. The Farm Show runs from January 10th to the 17th at the Farm Show Complex. Up to 500,000 people are expected to attend. And Buffalo Bills fans have something new to shout about. ESPN is producing a national special about Highmark Stadium. The special, entitled Where Else Would You Rather Be, thank you, Marv Levy, will be narrated by legendary ESPN broadcaster and longtime Bills supporter Chris Berman. Berman praised the Ralph's harsh conditions, passionate fans, and unique design, comparing it to Lambeau Field and Soldier Field. The documentary can be found on YouTube later this week before it airs on ESPN at a yet-to-be-determined date. All right, up next, a timely best-of edition of Real Answers. The subject, dealing with those wintertime post-Christmas blues.
Let this winter pass on by.
You know, Christmas in the rearview mirror. The driveway is encrusted in ice and snow in a lot of cases, and it's cold and it's nasty, and what are we to do?
That's right, and it's Christmas and the holidays are in the rearview mirror, and now we've kind of entered that period of time when most people, I should say, have taken down their lights, and it's not quite as bright and cheery out in the streets as it was even 1 month ago. So we're definitely into the I don't know, it's not really a dog days of winter. What's the opposite of the dog days of summer? We're in the middle of it now, aren't we?
So, I mean, we've actually, in more recent times, we've heard some more proper terms put to some of this, such as SAD, seasonal affective disorder. So speak to that a little bit, if you would.
Yeah, the reduced light, natural daylight that we have in these parts here in the wintertime definitely has an impact on people. Over the course of, we'll say, the past 20 years, it's become more evident. And they've actually, like you just alluded to, have given it an actual disorder name, seasonal affective disorder. And I would say to some degree, most people are probably impacted by it, or, to one degree or another. You do have folks that really enjoy wintertime. And then, believe it or not, Mark, there's actually a subset of folks that have seasonal affective disorder in the summertime.
I'm married to one.
Okay.
Anything above like 60, she gets increasingly unhappy. So she embraces winter. So, yeah, it's not everybody.
Yeah. There's not that many people that do say that they would prefer to have the dark, gloomy days of winter over the bright sunshine of summertime, but they're out there.
I guess in our region here, primarily in New York and Pennsylvania, where we get winter in spades, as it were. It's the worst problem here. It's not just weather, though, is it?
No, a lot of it has to do, again, like I said, you get the hustle and bustle of the holidays, and then, of course, after that, there's a big slowdown right afterwards. But then, a lot of people are like, okay, come on, spring, let's get those brighter, sunnier days back. It's not entirely winter. Again, it's just kind of a change in the activity levels, and there's not as much going on immediately after the holidays. So there's a lot of factors that really kind of play into it. But the amount of daylight, the amount of sunny days, in theory, is a lot less, obviously. In the wintertime, we don't have the several days in a row of sunshine. And it's that natural lighting and people's lack of exposure to it is probably the primary driver of seasonal affective disorder.
You're listening to Real Answers, a regular Wednesday feature here on the Family Life Report. I'm here along with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. We're singing the winter blues, as it were. So what are some good practical ways to tackle that, Chris?
Well, one thing you want to do is you want to maintain your communication and your contact with other folks. Continue to go to church, continue to, if you're involved in small group ministries or other activities for your church, just maintain that structure, maintain that contact with others. That is really important. You don't want to, you don't want to isolate. If you do have a hard time with some seasonal depression, you definitely don't want to isolate and keep yourself away from others. Maintain your activity level, maintain your daily routine, because that right there is very important. That keeps you going. And then also, if you can get outside, try to get out and get some of that natural sunlight reflecting off the snow into your face. They say even as little as 15 minutes can have a noticeable impact on your mood levels. Getting that fresh air as well. We tend to stay inside, and stagnant air can also not be the healthiest thing in the world. So get outside, get some fresh air, and also exercise. If you belong to a gym or otherwise you like to put on the cross-country skis, the snowshoes, or just walk up and down your road a few times just to keep your activity levels up, those are things that are all going to make a big difference.
Thanks, Chris. A timely best of edition of Real Answers on coping with those post-Christmas, midwinter blues. Catch all of our original Family Life news features in their entirety by heading to Apple Podcast, YouTube, Spotify, or FamilyLife.org. This is the 5 o'clock report on Family Life.
The churches in Revelation give us some of Scripture's most sobering lessons about wealth. Hi, I'm Rob West with a Faith and Finance Minute. In Revelation 2 and 3, Jesus speaks directly to 7 churches, and 2 of them reveal how money can distort our spiritual vision. The church in Smyrna was materially poor, facing pressure and persecution, yet Jesus calls them rich. Their wealth was measured in faithfulness, not finances. Meanwhile, the church in Laodicea was proud of its prosperity, saying, I am rich, I need nothing. But Jesus exposes the truth. They were spiritually bankrupt, blind, and naked. These churches remind us that God's definition of wealth is radically different from ours. True wealth is found in faith, obedience, and dependence on Christ. Manage your finances wisely with the easy-to-use FaithFi app. Download FaithFi, Faith and Finance from your app store, or learn more at faithfi.com.
Thank you, sir. Still to come here on the 5 o'clock report. They started out as the Savoy Big Five, but you know them as the Harlem Globetrotters. Their amazing history coming up.
Hi, I'm Kevin Williams, and here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. Well, the recent system to bring rain, a little snow, and ice moving away now, and we actually have a little January thaw ahead. It'll peak on Friday with temperatures breaking 50 for many, but with rain showers. Winter chill and lake flakes will return by the second half of the weekend. The cold for the night tonight. Can't rule out a spot of drizzle, freezing drizzle, or an evening flurry. Otherwise, cloud cover breaking a bit for some overnight. Low temps, mid-20s to mid-30s. But tomorrow, clouds break and turning partly sunny. Milder, high temps 40s. Even milder Friday, but cloudy with showers arriving. High temperatures mid-40s to the middle 50s.
I like the sound of that. Thank you very much, Kevin. Finally, at 5... the strains of Sweet Georgia Brown, theme song of the Harlem Globetrotters, who started out not in Harlem, but Chicago as the Savoy Big Five, named for a hotel ballroom there. 99 years ago today, they played their first game, and they lost, which is rare, but they soon began winning games and winning over crowds with their amazing skills and on-court comedy. They moved to Harlem 40 years later. Their contributions to the game of basketball include the slam dunk, fast break, and the forward and point guard positions. They launched the NBA career of Nate Clinton, the league's first black player. The famed Wilt Chamberlain played for them for a year, and they really are Globetrotters, having played in 124 countries on 6 continents, and they almost always win, of course. They've only lost 345 times in over 27,000 games. And that's the world we live in for Wednesday, January 7th, 2026. As always, we thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Webster, Family Life News.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.